Welcome to Crying Inside, where we share emotional family stories moments that might break your heart but also teach you deep lessons to move forward. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any story. And if you've been with Crying Inside for a while, we truly appreciate your support. Family life isn't always sweet and perfect. Sometimes, the people we trust the most end up hurting us the deepest. But from that pain, we learn how to stand up, grow stronger, and value ourselves. Today, I want to share a special story with you. A story you might find hard to believe, but it happened to me and left an unforgettable mark. Family can lift you up, but it can also push you down into the depths. This is my story, about a wedding canceled by my own parents. That morning, in mid-May 2022, Houston was just brightening up after a night of heavy rain. I was sitting in my small apartment, sipping hot coffee, and opening my laptop to review quarterly reports for Aurora Hospitality Group. Although I was only 23, fresh out of Stanford with an MBA, I had built a billion-dollar business empire that my family didn't even know about. Outside, people only saw me living modestly in a small apartment, driving an old Honda. No one guessed I was behind a string of luxury hotels. Suddenly, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw my dad's name, Richard Carter. His voice was so serious that I straightened up immediately when I answered. "Isabella, you need to come home right now. We need to talk." Just a few simple words, but I knew right away this wasn't an ordinary call. My dad only used this tone when he was about to announce a decision he considered critical. About 30 minutes later, I drove to the family mansion in the Houston suburbs. The house where I grew up still stood like a fortress, with white fences, neatly trimmed lawns, and a garage full of luxury cars. Inside, a heavy atmosphere filled the living room. My mother, Margaret, sat up straight on the leather sofa, her lips pressed tightly into a thin line. My father stood by the fireplace, looking like he was running a shareholders' meeting. My sister, Sophie, lazily slouched in the armchair, scrolling through her phone with that smirk she perfected back in high school. As I walked in, Dad didn't even let me sit down. He ordered, "Sit down, Isabella." I stayed standing, looking him straight in the eye. The air in the room was so thick, I could hear the ticking of the wall clock secondhand loud and clear. "What's this about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. My mother spoke first, her tone icy cold. "We've made a decision about your wedding." My heart started pounding. "What decision?" Dad turned around, his face carved from stone. "We won't be paying for this wedding anymore. It's all just a joke, a pointless waste. And we've canceled everything." Those words hit me like a knife. I felt my chest tighten. "Sorry, did you just say that?" He crossed his arms, his voice sharp. "You heard me. We're not funding this anymore. This wedding is not happening. You turned it into a ridiculous mess, spending $75,000 on just one day." I tried to stay calm. "We agreed on the budget months ago. You planned based on that agreement." Sophie finally looked up from her phone, eyes full of mockery. "Well, that was before we realized you were throwing money away on stupid stuff." "Stupid? What do you mean?" Mom jumped in, her tone bitter. "Like that $4,000 dress you picked. Something you'll only wear once. Or those crystal and gold-plated tables for decoration. Who needs that for a wedding?" I took a deep breath. I spent 8 months preparing. Marcus and I worked on every detail together. Marcus. Dad cut me off, his lips curling into a mocking smile. "Him again. You want to marry someone who works for a non-profit? Someone with no future, no ambition, and no ability to support a family? It's really disappointing. He's a good man. He loves you. And we want to build a simple, happy life together. You should think it over. This might be a sign. Maybe you should call off everything." "What do you mean by that? You want me to call off the engagement? Find a man who's worthy, with income and a future, not some dreamer living on love and volunteering." "Yeah, because living in a cramped apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda really shows how high your standards are." I looked at each face in turn. Dad was stern like a judge, Mom cold as ice, and my sister full of contempt. These are the people who raised me, who taught me my first lessons, but now they were blatantly crushing the greatest happiness of my life. I spoke up, my voice hoarse but clear. "What are you saying? I've called the restaurant, the vendors, canceled everything. We lost the deposit, but it's better than losing more. Our names are on the contracts. Legally, we have full rights. Photography and fresh flowers, too. Everything's been canceled. Saved a lot of money. You canceled everything without even telling me? Yes. And you should be thankful for that. You'll see later that we were right, not Marcus. Think carefully. I swallowed hard, feeling 8 months of preparation vanish in an instant. The wedding dress I picked, the flowers I wanted to remind everyone of Grandma's garden, the menu Marcus and I planned late into the night. All of it vanished just because they thought I wasn't worthy. The room felt heavy, and all I could hear was my heart pounding. My parents didn't just cancel the wedding, they also destroyed the last bit of trust I had in them. My name is Isabella Carter. I'm 23 years old. To most people around me, I'm nothing special. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Houston, driving a Honda Civic that's over 10 years old. Neighbors usually see me in old jeans and simple shirts, carrying a worn-out laptop bag, looking like a recent college grad struggling to find a job. Even my parents think I'm still trying to start something and living off allowances. They've never seen me in expensive suits, never seen me at fancy business parties, and don't know where those midnight calls I get come from. I hide it all, not because I'm ashamed, but because I understand my family well. They only see people through money, status, and social connections. The truth is, behind that simple look, I run a $2.8 billion company called Aurora Hospitality Group. I built it from scratch, starting from an idea that sparked when I was a tech-loving teenager. My journey began back in high school. While friends spent time hanging out at the basketball court or wandering the mall, I was glued to an old computer, typing out clumsy lines of code. I created a study habit management app. At first, it was just for me and a few friends, but unexpectedly, it got downloaded tens of thousands of times on the App Store. At 19, I sold my first app to a small software company and made my first $2 million. But that was only the beginning. I didn't spend lavishly like many young people do. I used most of the money to learn more, attend tech seminars, and make small investments in real estate. While my friends my age were busy with summer vacations or shopping for designer brands, I quietly spent every hour reading up on the financial market, commercial real estate, and business expansion strategies. When I started my MBA at Stanford, I already owned a few rental properties with steady income. I lived like a regular student, staying in the dorm, wearing simple clothes, but every night I'd spend hours studying investment maps and expansion plans. Aurora Hospitality Group was born from a small lakeside hotel I bought with the profits from selling my second app. At first, no one paid much attention to that hotel. It was just an old building in need of repairs. I poured all my heart into renovating it, turning it into a luxury place that still felt warm and inviting. Customers loved it, word spread, and from there, I scaled up the model. In just 4 years, from a single property, Aurora grew into a corporation owning over 20 hotels and resorts across Texas, California, and Florida. Deals worth hundreds of millions kept getting signed, with buy-sell negotiations happening behind closed doors, where I sat across from investors 3 times my age. And through it all, my parents had no idea. To them, I was still the useless girl living in a tiny apartment, directionless in life, about to marry a man with no future. The truth is, I chose to hide it because I wanted to see who truly loved me. I wanted to know if Marcus, my fiancé, was with me for who I am, not for the huge fortune. And he proved that every single day. He accepted a simple life and stood by me from the days no one believed in me. He never asked about my income or cared about flashy things. To him, I'm just Isabella, the woman he loves. My family, however, was different. My father, a notorious investor in Houston, always put financial gain above all else. He could make major family decisions like he was running a board meeting. My mother, Margaret, was a woman whose life revolved around luxury appearances and social parties. She wouldn't tolerate anything less than perfect in the eyes of their high society friends. And Sophie, my younger sister, is their exact image, arrogant and sarcastic. They look at me and only see a weak girl, with nothing but naive love in her hands. They don't know that behind my back, I'm signing contracts worth hundreds of thousands. They don't know that I'm actually the owner of Lakewood Estate, the wedding venue they just claimed to cancel. I keep everything secret because I want to live my real life, not the version they force on me. But that morning, when my parents ruthlessly canceled the wedding and crushed my happiness, I knew the time had come. This secret can't be hidden anymore, and the truth, once revealed, will change everything. My family's house always radiated classic American luxury. The living room was huge, with high ceilings and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Abstract paintings my father bought at auctions hung on the walls, and the oak floor gleamed under warm yellow light. In the center was a glossy dark brown leather sofa set and a tempered glass coffee table, making the space feel more like a fancy boardroom than a family room. My father often stood there by the fireplace, just like a CEO chairing a board meeting. He never sat down when discussing important matters. He always stood straight, his voice echoing with authority. My mother sat sternly on the sofa, legs crossed, eyes scrutinizing every move. My sister acted as if she were just at a cafe with friends, sometimes smirking, clearly showing disdain. That was the miniature picture of a traditional American family many once admired. On the outside, they had it all. A successful father, a classy mother, a home in an upscale neighborhood. But behind that glamour was an indescribable coldness. My family believed in the values American society often praises, but they interpreted them in the harshest way. My father valued family honor above personal happiness. To him, honor was tied to money, career, and what others would think. My mother lived her whole life focused on what's called social image. She loved showing off about cocktail parties, charity events, and photos with friends at fancy gatherings. My younger sister grew up in that world, learning to mock those who weren't on their level, judging people by the cars they drove or the houses they lived in. They always talked about the American dream. But for them, the American dream wasn't about independence, persistence, or hard work. It was about maintaining status, keeping up appearances, and marrying someone equal or above. Anyone who didn't meet those standards was looked down on. When I said I wanted to marry Marcus, who works for a nonprofit, my parents reacted strongly. To them, Marcus was the embodiment of failure. It didn't matter that he was kind, sincere, and loved me deeply. What mattered was that his income was below the standard they set. They believed a marriage only mattered if it came with financial stability, social status, and beneficial business connections. My wedding was originally planned to be in Austin, Texas, a luxury hotel by the lake with a big garden and a grand ballroom. I had every moment carefully planned. 150 guests, including close friends, Marcus's colleagues, and some of my college friends. I wanted it to be a warm, loving ceremony, a true celebration of happiness. But to my parents, spending $75,000 on the wedding was proof of wastefulness. They looked at the flowers, the tablecloths, the outfits, and thought it was all just showy extravagance. They didn't see that it was my dream, the result of 8 months of preparation, the joy of a girl about to start a new chapter in life. In the living room that day, I saw the clear divide between generations. I believed personal happiness mattered more than numbers or social image. They believed a marriage only had value if it made others admire you. For me, love is the root of it all. For them, money and fame are the foundation. That difference isn't just the gap between two generations. It's the gap between two worlds, and a world where my parents lived for the opinions of others. My father walked over to the desk, took out a thick stack of files, and slammed them down with a sharp bang. He looked me straight in the eye, his voice cold and firm. We have canceled the contracts with the venue, the restaurant, the photographer, and all other services. Everything is over. I stared at him, my mind blank for a few seconds. 8 months of preparation, dozens of appointments, countless sleepless nights arranging every detail, all wiped away with a single short sentence. My throat tightened, but I tried to stay calm. My mother quickly cut in, her voice cold as if to shut down any hope of protest. Losing the deposit is better than letting our daughter ruin the family's honor. You don't understand, Isabella. This honor is more important than a meaningless wedding day. My heart felt heavy. Honor, in my mother's eyes, wasn't about love or kindness, but about the judgment of friends, the gossip at high society parties. Sophie sneered, eyes mocking as they glanced at me. Yeah, who marries a guy who works for a nonprofit? You planning to live off charity dinners? Ridiculous. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, but I clenched them tightly to keep a calm appearance. I wanted to scream, to shout in their faces that I didn't need anyone's permission to be happy. But I knew if I lost control right then, they'd see it as proof I wasn't mature enough. The room felt suffocating. My father crossed his arms, eyes full of judgment. My mother sat silently, cold as if I were just an employee who made a mistake and had to take responsibility. And Sophie laughed mockingly, enjoying the moment she thought I had lost. I swallowed hard, trying to speak calmly. "Mom, Dad, this is my wedding. Marcus and I planned everything together, agreed on every detail. I don't understand why you have the right to cancel without asking me." My father leaned forward, his tone decisive, like he was making a business deal. "Our family name is above all contracts. That means we have the legal right to cancel. And we did the right thing. Marcus isn't the right fit. You're not capable of managing a life the way you imagine. It's better to end it now," my mother added bitterly. "You can't keep chasing illusions. An expensive wedding proves nothing except that you're trying to show off. The honor of this family will not be dragged down by a foolish decision." Sophie shrugged, smirking. "If you really want to marry him, just go have a courthouse wedding, quick, free, and more affordable for you." My face flushed with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You think I'm not capable. You think my love is worthless just because Marcus isn't rich. You've forgotten that happiness can't be measured by money." My father bluntly replied, "Money is the foundation of everything. You'll understand when you fail. I'm just trying to stop that from happening." The atmosphere in the room felt like a courtroom. I was the defendant, and my parents and sister were the judges. They had already decided the sentence, and I didn't stand a chance to defend myself. My mind raced with memories. The day Marcus and I picked out the pure white wedding dress, the day we sampled appetizers at the Austin Hotel, the moment we held hands and smiled because we found the perfect place to hold the ceremony. All of it felt like happy pieces that my own parents had just crushed. I felt like there was an invisible wall between me and them. My parents were no longer my support, and my sister was no longer family. They put honor and social image above blood ties. I stood there silently. No tears, no begging, no pleas. I just looked at each face, to engrave the truth that my family had just betrayed me in the cruelest way. My silence pleased my father. He nodded as if he had won a battle. "Good. You understand. Someday you'll thank us." I turned away, my voice trembling but firm. "Yes, I understand." In that moment, I knew one thing. This was no longer just a family argument. This is the start of a real confrontation, and I won't let them decide for me forever. I hadn't even sat down before Dad continued with a cold, final tone. "The problem isn't just the wedding costs, Isabella. The problem is, you're putting your whole life in the hands of a man with no future. Marcus is a dreamer, working at a nonprofit, no financial plan, no backing. How do you think you'll live with someone like that?" I took a deep breath. "Dad, Marcus isn't a dreamer. He dedicates himself to helping others. He chose a meaningful job instead of chasing money, and I love him for his sincerity, for his kind heart." Mom shook her head, eyes full of disdain. "Sincerity won't pay the electricity bills. A kind heart can't buy a decent house. You need to be more realistic, Isabella. A marriage can't survive on sweet words alone. You need a man with status, income, someone who can give you the life you deserve." Sophie laughed, raising her phone. "Oh my God, sounds like a cheap soap opera. Do you really believe love is enough? Let me post this online. My friends will get such a good laugh." I glared at my sister, voice choking up. "Sophie, stop right now. This is not a joke." But she kept filming, pointing the camera right at me, eyes full of amusement. "You look so desperate. People are definitely going to love watching the bride get dumped by her family right before the wedding. You're going to be famous." My chest ached, like a knife twisting inside. It wasn't just humiliation, but betrayal from the people I called family. I turned back, trying to explain, voice trembling but firm. "I love Marcus not because he's rich or poor. I choose him because he respects me, because he's always there when I'm at my weakest. My happiness doesn't need to be measured by numbers or the gossip out there." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You're blinded, Isabella. Dad doesn't want me to ruin my life over some fantasy love. I have to find someone worthy, someone who can bring stability. We didn't raise you for 23 years just to see you marry a man with nothing." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I held them back. "Dad, why can't you believe that happiness doesn't come from money? Why can't you believe I can make my own choices?" My mom crossed her arms and sighed. "Isabella, you're too naive. You think love will keep you warm in an old house? You think encouragement will pay your children's tuition. You're delusional. Wake up. Sophie still smiled, holding her phone higher. Listen up, everyone. This is my sister, who believes love is more important than money. A perfect comedy. I'm sure this video will get thousands of views. I clenched my fists, overwhelmed with pain and anger. I never thought my family could be this cruel. They didn't just ruin my wedding, they destroyed even the smallest respect for me. In that moment, I felt trapped in a corner. Everyone I loved, who should have supported me, turned their backs. I felt like a stranger in the home I grew up in. I looked straight at Dad, my voice hoarse. If you truly believe happiness only comes from marrying someone rich, then you've never understood me, and maybe you never will. Mom frowned, her eyes full of disappointment. You'll regret it, Isabella, when Marcus isn't by your side anymore. When you're exhausted from having to handle everything alone, that's when you'll remember what your parents said. But by then, it'll be too late. Sophie put her phone down, still wearing a mocking smile. I don't know whether to pity you or laugh in your face. It's really sad. My heart tightened. I saw one thing clearly. The people I called family were no longer on my side. They treated my love like a joke. They see my happiness as foolishness. And worse, they're willing to turn my pain into entertainment. I turned away, my eyes burning. I don't need a man who fits my parents' definition. I just need true love. If you can't accept that, then I can't keep believing you're protecting me. The room fell silent. Only the ticking of the wall clock and my pounding heart filled the space. I knew from that moment the line between me and my family had changed forever. My father opened a file on the table, pulling out thick sheets filled with numbers, signatures, and clear stamps. He carefully placed them in front of me, as if presenting evidence in a trial. Isabella, I've signed to cancel all the contracts. The wedding venue, the restaurant, the photographer, the band. Everything has been canceled. It's all over. I stared at the papers, feeling the blood freeze inside me. I never thought they'd go this far. Everything I planned for months, every detail Marcus and I chose, was now just crossed out papers with my father's signature. You can't do this. Why didn't you ask me before deciding? I tried to keep calm, but inside I was storming. My mother quickly interrupted, her voice steady and cold like discussing a business deal. Our family name is on the contract. That means we have full legal rights. Your father's cancellation is legal. No one can sue us. That's the final decision. I was speechless, not because she was wrong, but because she was right, in the cruelest way. I had them put their names on the contracts to make the process easier, and now they were using it against me. Sophie sneered, resting her chin on her hand as she looked at me. Honestly, you should be grateful. We helped you get out of a joke. Don't you see? That wedding was nothing but a ridiculous stage. The sooner it's canceled, the less embarrassed you'll be. Every word felt like a knife cutting into my heart. I looked at my sister, then glanced at my parents. They didn't just cancel my wedding plans. They acted like it was a favor, a gift I should be grateful for. My father folded his arms and nodded. That's right. You'll thank us later. When you're mature enough, you'll understand we did the right thing. Marcus wasn't worthy. That wedding was a waste, and we saved you from a mistake. The room fell silent. I felt my heart shatter, but I stood firm. I knew if I let a single tear fall, they'd see it as a victory. I took a deep breath to steady my heart. Then I spoke, softly but clearly. I understand. All three looked briefly surprised by my reaction. They expected me to cry, beg, or get angry. They were waiting for a show to prove I was weak and dependent. But instead, I gave them decisive silence. My father smiled lightly, satisfied. Good. You've grown up. You'll see we only want what's best for you. I didn't reply. In my mind, a spark just ignited. I knew I couldn't stand still and let them control my life any longer. They think I'm powerless. They think I need them to live. But the truth is the opposite. I built everything without them. And now is the time for them to know that. I turned and walked out of the room, not looking back. As my hand touched the door handle, I heard Sophie's voice behind me. Don't be so dramatic, Isabella. You should be thankful. Thanks to us, you didn't turn your life into a public joke. I paused for a second, took a deep breath. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just realistic. And the time will come when everyone has to face the truth. I opened the door, stepped out, leaving behind their stunned looks. I didn't feel weak anymore. I was no longer the girl forced to obey. From that moment, I knew I had a plan that, when complete, would make my family never underestimate me again. Driving back to the apartment, the Texas sky stretched out before me, and I thought about everything that had happened. The pain was still there, the betrayal still fresh like a new wound, but beneath that hurt, a strength was forming. I wasn't going to let them decide my fate, and this time, they would be the ones facing the consequences of what they did. The old Honda rolled away from the family mansion, merging into the heavy traffic on the suburban road heading toward downtown Houston. Outside the window, tall buildings slowly appeared, but in my mind, I didn't see that view. I was drifting back into the past, to those early days that seemed small but laid the foundation for everything. I remembered the tiny dorm room at Stanford, the desk piled high with scrap paper, the computer running all night, empty coffee cans scattered everywhere. When friends went out, I sat quietly writing line after line of code. I created an app to manage study habits to help organize my schedule. That app unexpectedly became popular on campus and then spread beyond. Just a few months later, tens of thousands of downloads turned a simple idea into a real business opportunity. At 19, I sold that app to a small company for $2 million. That was the first time I tasted what it was like to be an entrepreneur and realized that technology and determination could change your destiny. I didn't blow all that money like many young people might. I saved it, invested in small projects, and bought a few cheap properties in the suburbs. Some people mocked me, saying, "What did a young woman know about investing?" But I was patient, reading every book, attending seminars, learning from failures, and testing every step. By the time I was 20, I developed another tech startup. This time, it was an app for hotel booking and travel services. When a big corporation noticed it and offered to buy it for $12 million, I knew this was a turning point. I sold the company, took that money, and decided to invest it all in a field few thought I'd dare enter: vacation real estate. The first hotel I bought was just an old building by a lake on the outskirts of Dallas. It was run down, empty, and hardly anyone believed I could turn it around. But I saw the potential. I poured my heart into it, hired a young architect who shared my vision, and transformed it into a warm yet modern 5-star hotel. I personally got involved in every detail, from interior design to menu selection. And when it reopened, people were amazed. The Lakeside Hotel became a celebrated destination in travel magazines. Revenue increased tenfold in just 1 year. That was the beginning of Aurora Hospitality Group. From one hotel, I expanded to 3, then 5, then 10. I bought properties others thought were hopeless and turned them into shining gems in the tourism industry. I worked nonstop. There were days that lasted 18 hours. Nights I slept only in my office chair. But I never felt tired, because every step forward was proof I was on the right path. By the age of 23, Aurora owned 20 luxury properties across 3 states: Texas, California, and Florida. Each place had its own style, but shared the philosophy of creating luxury with a familiar, welcoming feel. I didn't just build hotels, I built experiences, memories for those who came to us. And among those properties, there was one most special: Lakewood Estate. A stunning lakeside resort with a grand ballroom, a garden full of white flowers, and balconies overlooking the deep blue lake. That was where Marcus and I chose to hold our wedding. That was also where my parents coldly declared that the wedding was canceled. A faint smile crossed my lips as I recalled that moment. They thought they had cut off all hope, that I would kneel and beg, that I'd cry and thank them for saving me from a mistake. They had no idea all the real power was in my hands. Lakewood Estate wasn't just the wedding venue. It was also an asset of the Aurora Group. That's a part of the dream I built all by myself. My car drove through downtown, where the tall office building called Aurora Tower stands. I looked up and felt a mix of pain and pride swell inside me. My family had no idea, but every brick, every light in that building was tied to my hard work and sweat. Memories of that morning facing my parents flooded back. I could clearly feel the contempt in their eyes when they talked about Marcus, denying my love. I saw Sophie's smugness as she replayed that moment online. And most of all, I felt my mother's indifference, treating my wedding like a failed contract she wanted to erase. That pain wasn't small. It gnawed at my heart like an open wound. But right in that pain, a new strength was born. I no longer saw myself as a victim. I saw myself as the one holding the chess pieces, and it was time to play my own game. I didn't need to cry or beg. I only needed the truth. And the truth is, I'm not as weak as they think. I have in my hands $1 billion corporation, and I'll use that to make them pay for their betrayal. In the rearview mirror, I saw my own eyes. No more trembling, no more fear. Only determination and a burning fire. Lakewood Estate, the place my parents thought was gone, is still in my hands. And it's right there that my wedding will happen, no matter what they do. But there's one difference. That day, they won't be honored guests. They'll just be outsiders watching in, realizing they lost their last chance to be by my side. The next morning, as the new sunlight spilled through the window of my small apartment, I sat at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee in hand. I opened my laptop and reviewed the financial reports of Aurora Hospitality Group. Everything was still running smoothly. Huge numbers flooded the screen, reminding me that I've come a long way to get to today. The phone suddenly rang. My dad's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring a few times before picking up. His voice came through urgent and angry. "Isabella, what have you done? The restaurant refused to refund the deposit. They said the owner demanded to keep it all. Do you know what's going on? I didn't do anything. Maybe the owner has their own reasons." "What reasons?" "That's $7,500. That's a lot of money. How could they be so unreasonable?" "Do you know who gave the order?" "They said the decision came directly from the owner." "How could this happen?" "Dad, sometimes company leaders have their own policies. Maybe they don't want to refund that money. Maybe they see it as a lesson for customers who cancel contracts. Do you think this is a joke?" "This isn't a game, Isabella. You need to call them back immediately. You have to demand that they return that money." "I'm afraid I can't do that." "Can't? What do you mean? How do you know so much? Why are you talking like you're involved? Are you hiding something?" Deep down, I knew this moment would come sooner or later. I'd kept it hidden for too long. I lifted my head, my voice low but firm. "I'm not an outsider. I know exactly who made the decision, because that person is me." "What are you talking about, Isabella? Have you heard of Aurora Hospitality Group?" "The group currently owns more than 20 properties in Texas, California, and Florida, including Lakewood Estate, where you plan to have your wedding." "Of course I know. It's a big corporation. But what does that have to do with you?" "I'm the founder. I own Aurora Hospitality Group. In business, I use a different name. Emma Phoenix. No, to be precise, I'm Isabella Aurora." "No way. You're only 23. You're just a girl. How could you?" "I started with a small app in college, then expanded by selling the startup for $12 million. I invested in real estate, bought hotels, renovated them, and built the brand. Every brick, every contract, every number was built by my own hands. And today, Aurora is worth $2,800,000,000. I can imagine his face then, shifting from anger to surprise, then from surprise to fear. I continued. "So when you called Lakewood Estate to cancel the contract and demand the deposit back, I was the one who received that notice, and I was the one who decided to keep the money. Not because I needed the money, but because you needed a lesson." Isabella Aurora. "Oh my God, you're the owner of the group. You're the one behind it all. How could this have been kept from us for so long?" "I hid it because I knew you only saw me through the lens of money. I wanted to know who truly loves me. And now I have my answer." Then he muttered, his voice trembling. "Incredible. My daughter is the owner of Aurora. Oh God, how many years have you fooled us?" "I didn't fool anyone. I just didn't say anything. Because I wanted to live as myself. Not as the image you wanted me to be. But now everything has changed. My parents canceled my wedding, and now they have to face the consequences. My family, who once saw me as useless, is now facing a truth too big to accept. They thought they held all the power, but the real power is in my hands." This was the first shock, and it was just the beginning. That night, the Carter living room was no longer cold and controlling like usual. When I walked in, everyone's eyes were fixed on me, but this time there was no scorn, no sarcasm. Instead, there was shock, amazement, and fear. Sophie dropped her phone, her eyes wide open. Her voice faltered. You're the anonymous billionaire? You really are the owner of the Aurora Corporation." I can't believe it. Believe it or not, it's up to you. It's the truth. And that truth made everything my parents did this morning look ridiculous." He cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Isabella, we made a mistake. But now, Things can be fixed. We can cancel the decision to call off the wedding. You can still marry Marcus. We'll start over. I curled my lips into a smile that wasn't happy. Start over? Dad was talking like this was just a business deal that could be renegotiated any time. Do you think my happiness is just a contract you can cancel, remake, and pretend nothing ever happened? My mom, the coldest woman that morning, was now in tears. She stepped closer, her voice choked. Isabella, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I truly didn't know. If I had known how successful you'd become, I never would have. I cut her off. Never done anything. Never canceled the wedding. Never treated Marcus like a failure. Never trampled on my dreams. So if I were still just a poor girl driving an old Honda, living in a small apartment, would you parents change? Would you come to apologize like you do now? The room fell into complete silence. My father bowed his head, unable to look up. My mother stopped crying, her eyes red, but no words came out. Sophie sat motionless, her face like stone. I looked at each of them, feeling the pain inside me rising into fierce anger. You never saw me. You never saw who I really am. You only saw the image you wanted to see. A daughter who must marry a rich man, live in a fancy house, and uphold the family's reputation. You never asked if I was happy. My father lifted his head, his voice hoarse. Isabella, I only want what's best for you. You can't deny that a marriage needs a solid foundation. I just want you to be safe. Safe. You think happiness comes from safety bought with money, but you forgot that I never needed your money. I built my own path. And while I was working 18 hours a day to build Aurora, where were you? You were at fancy parties, caught up in gossip about reputation. And now you even have the nerve to say canceling my wedding was to keep me safe. Daughter, I admit I was wrong. I cared too much about appearances, what others thought. But please forgive me. Please don't turn our family into enemies. We're still family. I looked at her, heart aching, but my voice was cold. Family doesn't give parents the right to destroy you and then beg when they find out you're rich. Family can't be an excuse for selfishness and disrespect. I ask again. If I were still the poor girl driving an old Honda, would you parents change? The room was engulfed in heavy silence. Dad avoided my gaze. Mom lowered her head, her hands trembling. Sophie pressed her lips together, no longer daring to utter any mocking words. I stepped forward, standing right in the middle of the room. Silence is the answer. Mom and Dad won't change. They will let me suffer, let me lose everything, as long as they can keep their image in front of others. And now, when they find out I'm the one behind Aurora, they suddenly turn around, suddenly call it family love. But that's not love. It's just calculation. My father took a long breath, trying to hold on to whatever dignity he had left. You're being too harsh, Isabella. No family is without mistakes. We can fix things. We can stand together at your wedding, and everything will be fine. Things have changed forever. You've crossed a line you can never come back from. It was no longer an argument, no longer advice. This was a real confrontation. On one side was me, the daughter they once looked down on, now standing before them with the power of an empire. On the other side were my parents, realizing the power in this family no longer belonged to them. The atmosphere in the room was thick and heavy like a storm. Shocked looks, belated tears, and prolonged silence confirmed it all. My family was no longer a place of peace. They had become strangers standing opposite me. And from here, the real battle began. The room remained shrouded in heavy silence. My parents were confused. My sister sat motionless. I knew it was time to speak the truth I had long hidden. I took another step forward, looking straight at my parents. My voice rang clear, every word decisive. The wedding will go on as planned. You have no right to cancel it, because the contract is actually in your name, as the owner of Lakewood Estate. My father glared at me, as if he couldn't believe his ears. My mother raised her hand to cover her mouth, tears freezing before she could wipe them away. Sophie blinked repeatedly, trying to understand what I just said. My father stammered. What did you say? The contract is in your name, but you signed it, you already. You signed to cancel a contract you thought was the only one. But actually, there were 2 contracts for the same day. One contract was in your parents' names, so the family could save face in society. And one contract was signed by me, as the property owner. You can cancel your contract, but no one can cancel mine. That's impossible. So that means... I nodded, eyes sharp and cold. It means my wedding was never canceled. Everything you did was meaningless, and the wedding will still happen on the exact day, time, and place. Oh my God. So that means all the footage you recorded, all the mocking words, just made you a joke? You don't need to worry about that, because you won't be at the wedding either. The only difference after your parents' actions is this: they and you are no longer invited. My father froze, his face flushed with shame and anger. My mother burst into tears. Sophie panicked, her voice trembling. No, you can't do that. We are family. You can't have a wedding without inviting your parents and sister. Please don't do this. Family doesn't cancel each other's weddings. Family doesn't stand up in the living room to tear apart a daughter's happiness and call it a favor. If you believe family has the right to do that, then you're wrong. Isabella, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I just wanted to protect you from making a mistake. But now I realize you're stronger than I thought. You've built an empire. I'm truly proud. Please don't cut ties with the family. Let us make things right. Daughter, your mother was wrong. Please forgive us. Please give us a chance. We will never dare to destroy your happiness again. Let us be there on your special day. I pulled my hand back, my voice cold. A chance? You already had your chance. That chance was the 8 months I spent planning the wedding. That chance was when I begged you to understand that Marcus is the one I love. But you didn't listen. You chose to destroy everything, and now you have to live with that decision. Sophie burst into tears, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Isabella. I was wrong. I shouldn't have mocked you or made that video. I just thought it was a joke. I really regret it. Please don't exclude me from the wedding. I'll do anything to make it right. I looked at my sister, sad but firm. You called my love a joke. You turned my pain into a laughingstock for your friends. You're sorry now, but only because you know I'm rich. If I were still poor, like you thought, you'd never apologize. You know that, and I know it too. The room fell into silence. The sound of Mom's sobbing, Dad's desperate eyes, my sister's belated tears. But I didn't waver, because I know if I forgive easily, they'll never learn this lesson. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. Family doesn't call off each other's weddings. Family doesn't trample on each other's happiness. If you thought you were doing this for my own good, then today, I'm doing this for yours. I want my parents to understand that true love doesn't depend on money or fame. And I want my sister to know that mockery can break a heart. I turned my back and walked toward the door. The wedding will still happen as planned, but my parents and sister will no longer be part of it. That's the price they have to pay for their betrayal. My mother's sobs echoed behind me. Isabella, please don't do this. You'll regret cutting ties with your family. I'll regret it if I let my family destroy me one more time, and I won't allow that to happen. I opened the door and stepped outside, leaving behind a room full of people who once thought they had the right to control my life. That night, sitting alone in my small apartment, I felt a strange sense of peace. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt completely free. The wedding would still take place. Marcus would still hold my hand at the altar, and those who truly loved me would be there. As for my parents and sister, they would only hear from afar that Isabella Carter had become Isabella Aurora, and that she had chosen her own life, no longer dependent on anyone. And that was just the beginning. A few days later, after the family storm had calmed, my parents came to the headquarters of Aurora Hospitality Group. They entered the Aurora Tower in downtown Houston, still wearing their usual proud and elegant expressions. But this time, everything was no longer in their hands. I was in a meeting when my assistant informed me that 3 guests were insisting on seeing me. When I heard the names, I just sighed. Have security handle it. Tell them there's no entry without an appointment. I'm Richard Carter. My daughter owns this building. I have the right to see her. The head of security stood straight, his voice calm. Sorry, Mr. Carter. The company policy is very clear. Even the owner's family needs an appointment in advance. If not, please leave the building. My mom burst into tears right there, while Sophie angrily called her friends, hoping at least someone would acknowledge her status. But no one cared. Just minutes later, all 3 of them were asked to leave, standing alone on the crowded sidewalk, becoming shadows in the world they once thought they controlled. From that day on, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages flooded in, emails kept coming, with pleas and accusations alike. But it was all useless. I blocked their numbers, blocked emails, and had my secretary filter out all messages coming from my family. In my heart, That bond was broken, and I wouldn't give them a second chance. Marcus was the only one I hadn't told the whole truth to. That evening, I invited him to my apartment. When he walked in, his eyes full of worry. "Isabella, what's going on? My dad called you, saying the family's in big trouble, that I did something terrible. You didn't know who to believe." I took a deep breath and told him everything. From my early days of starting out, risky business deals, building Aurora, and keeping everything secret from my family. I told him about my parents canceling the wedding, my sister's betrayal, and finally my decision to cut them out of the wedding. Marcus was silent the whole time, his eyes shifting from surprise to shock to anger. When I finished, I lowered my head, my voice choking up. "You might be mad at me for hiding all this, but you need to know I love you for who you are, not because of Aurora. I was afraid if I told you sooner, you'd see me differently." Marcus stepped closer and took my hand. "I'm not mad at you because of the money. I'm mad because your family treated you that way. I don't care if you're Isabella Carter or Isabella Aurora. I only care that you're the woman I love. And from now on, I'll protect you from anyone who hurts you, even your own family." My tears finally fell, but they were tears of relief. I knew I had chosen the right person. Marcus doesn't love Aurora. He loves me, and that makes all my sacrifices worth it. The next day, I sat in the office and wrote a long letter. Not an email or a text, but a real letter with clear blue ink. I signed it with both names, Isabella Carter and Isabella Aurora. In the letter, I wrote that I was officially cutting ties with the family. That canceling their wedding broke the last thread of trust. I wrote that from now on they have no right to interfere in any decisions in my life. I disown them not out of hatred, but because I need to protect myself from selfishness and scheming. After sending the letter via special delivery, I sat back in the office, heart aching. I knew I had just done the most painful thing in my life, but also the most necessary. There were moments when the sadness overwhelmed me. I remembered childhood days when Dad carried me on his shoulders in the park, when Mom held my hand crossing the street, when Sophie and I laughed loudly together in the rain. Those memories were beautiful pieces, but now shattered. Now, looking back, all I see is emptiness. But alongside the pain, there's a sense of peace creeping in. I'm no longer bound by control and judgment. I'm no longer living in my parents' shadow, no longer hearing their scorn or feeling belittled. For the first time in my life, I'm completely free to walk my own path. That night, Marcus held me close. He whispered, "You lost a family, but you still have us, and we'll build a new family based on true love." I closed my eyes, resting against his chest. In that moment, I understood that loss isn't the end. Sometimes, it's a door opening to a new beginning, and I'm ready to walk through that door, no matter how much darkness lies behind it. The big day finally arrived. Lakewood Estate lit up in the cool autumn afternoon. The large garden was covered with white flowers, from small, lovely rose bushes to softly draping bougainvillea vines. Warm yellow lights hung from ancient tree branches, sparkling and reflecting on the calm lake, making the scene feel like a dream. I wore a pure white wedding dress, simple and elegant without being overly elaborate. As I stepped down the stairs leading to the garden, applause erupted. Friends from college, colleagues from Aurora, those who stood by me through the tough years, all were there. No father, no mother, no little sister. And strangely, I didn't feel the emptiness. I only felt warmth, because around me now were people who truly valued me, not for fame or wealth, but because they loved who I am. Marcus stood waiting at the end of the aisle, dressed in a simple yet classy suit. His eyes lit up when he looked at me. When his hand held mine, all the old sadness melted away. We vowed to be together in front of close friends, under the late afternoon sun and the whispering wind through the trees. The post-ceremony party was full of laughter. Everyone raised their glasses, sharing memories and sending blessings. Soft music played, and the string lights twinkled like thousands of stars. I danced with Marcus on the grass, my feet moving to the rhythm of the music. That was the moment I realized I had found true happiness. No more judgment, no more control. Only love, freedom, and my own choices remained. When night fell, I sat quietly on the balcony of Lakewood Estate, looking out over the lake. A feeling of liberation rose within me. My life had changed. I was no longer bound by my old family, but I had found a new family of my own, and that was enough to fill the emptiness inside. 6 months later, a thick envelope arrived at my office. The sender was my father, I opened the envelope to find a 3-page letter inside. He wrote that he regretted it, that he was wrong to cancel the wedding, and that he was proud of my business achievements. The word achievements was mentioned 15 times in the letter. He listed a series of deals Aurora had signed, as if trying to prove that he finally recognized my value. I read it all, then folded the letter. No tears, no anger, just a faint smile. I understood that it wasn't a real apology, just an attempt to mend a broken bond with numbers he thought mattered. I put the letter in the drawer and didn't reply. A year later, I received an email from Aurora's HR department. They forwarded me a job application. Zender's name, Sophie Carter. My sister, who had mocked and ridiculed me on my worst day, now hoping to work for the company I built. In the application, Sophie wrote a long paragraph saying she had changed, grown up, and realized her mistakes. She emphasized that she wanted to learn from me, had always admired me, and wanted to be part of Aurora. I sat quietly for a moment, then wrote a short note on the file. Do not hire. When I hit send, I felt neither satisfaction nor anger, just peace. Not everyone deserves a second chance, especially when that chance is only asked for after they've learned the truth about my worth. From that day on, I never looked back. I lived in the lake house with Marcus, hosting small parties with friends. Aurora kept growing, opening hotels in more states. My life was no longer overshadowed by the past, only lit by the present and future. On quiet nights, I still sometimes remember the morning my father coldly announced the wedding was off. Remember my sister's mocking gaze. Remember my mother's scornful voice. But each time I recall it, I no longer feel pain. I only feel gratitude, because that moment helped me find true strength within myself. And I understood one thing. Some relationships are born to teach us lessons, not to walk with us for a lifetime. Blood relatives aren't always your true family. Sometimes, you have to let them go to find the family your heart chooses. My story ends with a perfect wedding, a new life with the man I love, and a corporation I built with my own hands. But behind the sparkling lights of Lakewood Estate, behind the laughter of friends and colleagues, lies a harsh truth. I had to cut off my own blood relatives to rediscover my self-worth. The biggest lesson I learned from everything that happened is that family love only truly matters when it's not tied to money. Love can't be measured by numbers, nor defined by fame or status. My parents only changed their attitude after they knew I owned a billion-dollar corporation. But when I was just an ordinary girl, they were ready to cancel my wedding, ready to trample on my happiness without considering the pain I would suffer. Conditional love is no longer love. It's just a kind of transaction, an exchange based on benefits. If a family only loves you when you're successful, then that's not a family. If they only care when you're wealthy, then that's not unconditional love. The message I want to send to everyone is, unconditional love only truly exists when it's not dependent on your bank balance. I lost my parents and sister, but I didn't lose faith in love. I found true love with Marcus, and a new family among the friends and staff at Aurora, people who trust and value me for who I am, no matter what I have. And that's what really matters. When I share this story, I don't want the audience to feel sorry for me. I want the audience to see themselves in the story. Maybe you've experienced moments when your own family looked down on you. Maybe you've been judged because of the job you do or the money you make. And maybe, like me, you realize that your self-worth doesn't need anyone else to decide but you. I want to leave you with a few questions to think about and share in the comments. If your family called off your wedding right before the big day, how would you react? Would you stay silent and endure it, or would you stand up to protect your love and happiness? Do you think Isabella should forgive her parents after everything they've done? Is a late apology enough to erase the betrayal? And finally, do you believe family always comes before personal happiness? Or do you think sometimes personal happiness is what's truly worth fighting for and protecting? My story might be a mirror for you to look into and find your own answers. Because everyone has their own limits, and everyone has the right to choose their own path. I chose my path, a path without my parents and sister by my side, but one filled with freedom, love, and pride. If you've been through something similar, please share your story. If you have a different perspective, feel free to speak your mind. Because sometimes, the most honest conversations are how we find healing. The stories crying inside shares aren't just snapshots of life, they're reminders that everyone has the right to choose how they live and love. If today's story touched your heart, please leave a like to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories. Your support is the biggest motivation for this channel to keep sharing more real, emotional stories. And if you think someone needs to hear this story, please share the video to spread the message. Before you go, I want to leave you with one last message. Family can knock you down, but they can also teach you how to stand strong. Cherish your own worth, because only when you love and believe in yourself can you truly find happiness. See you in the next videos from Crying Inside.